There are moments when life itself seems to pause, as if waiting for your awareness to catch up with what the soul already knows. You'll call it coincidence. I call it alignment. The invisible threads that shape your fate are tightening, pulling you towards something inevitable. Perhaps that's why this message found you now, and not a moment sooner. You see, the psyche never loses its way. It only waits until you're ready to remember who's really guiding the journey.
You did not arrive here by accident. Something in you, older than your name and deeper than your biography, steered you to this precise threshold. Jung called it synchronicity, the moment when inner need and outer sign lock together like gears, and the world suddenly speaks your mother tongue. What looks like chance is timing. What looks like just another video is the unconscious sending you a sealed letter with your own handwriting on it. You are here because the old story is exhausted. Not merely inconvenient, exhausted. The meanings that once carried you have thinned to paper. Your ambitions, immaculate on the outside, ring hollow when tapped. There is a quiet terror in that recognition. You still move, yet movement feels mechanical. You still speak, yet words seem borrowed. You wake to a day that refuses to begin because the person who used to begin it no longer feels real. Jung warned that this would happen when the provisional life collapses. The provisional life is a beautiful costume, stitched from approval, fear, talent, trauma, culture, and worn long enough to mistake for skin. It works until it doesn't. The seams give way. The show ends. The applause fades. You step backstage, and the mirror does not return your face. The crisis is not punishment. It is precision. In Jung's view, the psyche courts catastrophe the way a surgeon courts incision, not for harm, but for healing. When meaninglessness reaches critical mass, the unconscious acts with mathematical ruthlessness. It turns off the false engines one by one. The fuel of comparison runs dry. The hope machine of tomorrow sputters. The ego's stage manager, that hustling voice that promises salvation if you work harder, forgets its lines. What remains is silence. What remains is the you that will not negotiate. This is the unbearable truth. You have outgrown the identity that once protected you. The shoes that carried you now pinch the bone. The house of your persona, well kept and admired, has no air left. You are not broken. You are oxygen-starved. And the soul, like a fire starved of air, dims not to die but to conserve. The dimness is mercy. The stillness is medicine. The emptiness is the room being cleared for something that cannot enter a crowded house. You are not here to fix yourself. You are here to meet yourself. Jung said that psychological truths cannot be shoved into consciousness. They ripen. When they ripen, they fall into your hands. Your presence here means ripeness. It means sufficient desperation. Desperate enough to release old patterns, not so desperate that you fragment. The unconscious waits for that narrow window. It has been preparing you with 1,000 little endings. The friendship that went silent, the job that frayed your nerves into thread, the night you finally admitted that success never kept its promises. Incremental dissolution. Not one drop more than necessary. Not one less. So the crisis arrives. Time thins. Goals lose oxygen. In the mirror of daily life, you no longer see motivation. You see choreography. Roles assigned by ancestral patterns, by complexes older than memory. The revelation is humiliating and holy. Much of what you called choice was gravity. Much of what you called purpose was compensation. Much of what you called love was a bargain with loneliness. Listen closely. The point is not self-condemnation. The point is seeing. When the eye turns from performance to presence, the stage lights dim and a deeper light turns on. In that light, your suffering is not absurd. It is exact. There is a design in it. Not a sadism, a design. The self, Jung's name for the wholeness that holds you, is recentering the system. Individuation is not self-improvement. It is self-reorganization around the truth. You were taught to outrun pain. But pain is a shepherd. It drives you toward a gate you would never choose, the gate of no longer being who you were. The lamb thinks the shepherd is cruel. The shepherd knows the cliff is worse. If your chest is heavy and your days feel paper-thin, if your appetite for proving is gone and your hunger for something wordless has become unbearable, you are not failing. You are ripening. You are crossing from narrative to knowing. Jung called this passage the threshold. Cross gently, but cross. Everything false is flammable here. Let it burn. What survives the fire belongs to you. Jung saw the psyche not as a machine to be optimized, but as a temple to be rediscovered. Layered halls, hidden staircases, altars long forgotten. He mapped its architecture with names that double as keys: shadow, persona, self, animus and anima. Complexes, the collective unconscious. He did not invent these forces. He recognized them the way a sailor recognizes currents, by the way water moves. Start with the persona, the mask we craft to meet the world. It is necessary and dangerous. Necessary, because society requires a face. Dangerous, because the face answers to applause and begins to forget the voice behind it. Beneath the persona lives the shadow. Not evil, but unlived. Everything disowned in you. The rage you called not me. The envy you named unspiritual. The joy you were told was too much. The tenderness you hid to seem invulnerable collects there like water behind a dam. Repression is a short-term loan at predatory interest. The debt comes due in symptom, projection, and fate. Complexes are clusters of feeling thought, electrically charged around an archetypal core. They are the way the past interrupts the present. A father complex puts a ghost behind every authority figure. A mother complex edits the script of intimacy. An inferiority complex hides inside excellence and calls hunger high standards. Complexes seize the steering wheel. You think you are driving, you are being driven. Archetypes are older than any personal story. They are patterns of psychic energy. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the hermit, the child, the wise old man, that constellate experiences into meaning. They do not belong to you. You belong to them, briefly, as they move through your life to complete their form in time. The self is the regulating center and circumference, the mysterious totality that holds opposites until they can reconcile. It appears as mandala in dream, as stranger in vision, as a numinous authority that feels like home and other at once. The ego resists, suspecting dethronement. It is correct. Individuation is the transfer of sovereignty from ego to self. Jung's diagnosis is unsentimental. Most suffering is meaning starvation. We organize our lives around substitutes because we have lost relationship with the inner symbolic life. We worship surfaces and hemorrhage depth. Consumerism offers identities like costumes. Social media converts persona into commerce. Our mirrors multiply. Our reflection fractures. Our shadow fattens on the diet of denial. The psyche responds with symptoms: anxiety, compulsions, collapses of motivation, not as malfunctions but as messages. Neuroscience, in its own language, confirms the pattern. Trauma binds the nervous system to threat. The default mode network loops narratives of self. Mirror neurons rehearse comparison. Plasticity hardens around fear and habit. But the deepest diagnosis remains mythic. We are exiled from the center. We orbit the false sun of approval. We forget the self. Jung does not moralize. He invites encounter. He teaches the transcendent function, the dialogue between conscious and unconscious, by which new third things are born. When the ego stops dictating and begins to listen, symptom becomes symbol, compulsion becomes compass. A panic attack becomes a messenger, not an enemy. A dream becomes a letter from the night. A projection withdrawn becomes a piece of soul returned. The task is not to perfect the persona or annihilate the shadow, but to include, to hold tension of opposites until something larger, wiser, and strangely familiar emerges between them. That emergence is not a trick of thought. It is a felt recentering. You recognize it the way a house recognizes its foundation after years of being tilted. Here, Jung's language meets spiritual ones. The alchemists called the phases nigredo, albedo, rubido, blackening, whitening, reddening, not as metaphors only, but as metaphysical chemistry of the heart. Kierkegaard speaks of despair as the sickness unto death that becomes doorway to authenticity. Frankl insists meaning can metabolize suffering into purpose. Rumi sings of wounds as the place where light enters. Neuroscience points to neurogenesis, new wiring through new attention. Different tongues, same temple. What then is happening to you? Jung would say, your inner monarchy is changing hands. The collapse you fear is the self pruning away what cannot flower. The emptiness is not a vacuum. It is a womb. The silence is not failure. It is the room into which the next voice, yours wit, will finally speak. Beneath the loud theater of survival, quieter mathematics are at work. Alignment is not luck. It is the psyche's choreography when you stop arguing with it. The competitor's 5 revelations live here, but the soul's alphabet has more letters. What follows are 7 types of spiritual alignment that find you exactly when you are ready. 7 ways the self arranges time, symbol, and suffering to midwife your becoming. Threshold timing. Synchronicity as summons. You didn't choose this moment, it chose you. Jung saw synchronicity as meaning colliding with event, the inner clock striking the same hour as the outer world. The algorithm is secondary, the archetype is primary. You meet a book 3 times in 1 week. A stranger names your exact worry. A dream repeats with small variations, like a teacher circling the answer. The psyche confirms ripeness by triangulation. Coincidence turns to recognition, turns to obedience. Alignment, here, is the self knocking from inside the world. The message lands not because it is novel, but because resistance has softened enough to let it in. Critical mass suffering, precision medicine of the unconscious. Pain is not distributed at random. It is dosed. Jung called this the transformational threshold, just enough suffering to shatter the lie, not so much that you shatter with it. Months of tolerable numbness sharpen into a single night that will not be escaped. The old comforts lose potency. Distraction turns bitter. Achievement turns weightless. Denial turns noisy. The unconscious has been closing the exits one by one. Alignment, here, is the math of mercy. You reach optimal desperation, desperate enough to release, intact enough to receive. What hurts is curated. What breaks is protective casing. The core remains. The sacred void, Negredo's chamber, between the death of who you were and the birth of who you are, is not a hallway, but a chamber. It feels like annihilation because identity is a habit. and you are breaking a lifetime's habit of being yourself. Jung insisted. Do not rush this. Premature births create new personas dressed in spiritual fabric. The void is active emptiness, the room where fantasy burns off and reality condenses. Decision-making fails because the decider is dissolving. Motivation dies because its engines were compensatory. Alignment, here, is refusal. The soul's holy refusal to let you rebuild the old house in new colors. Wait, not passively, attentively. Dreams ripen in the dark. Specific medicine, core complex as teacher. Each life revolves around a central gravity, a core complex that shapes perception, attraction, avoidance, abandonment, control, unworthiness, superiority, invisibility. Whatever your axis, the world has conspired to mirror it until you finally see it. That is not cruelty. It is pedagogy. What repeats is what remains unconscious. Your particular suffering is precise antidote to your particular defense. If you fear being unchosen, you meet partners who echo your self-exile until you choose yourself. If you worship competence, you encounter failures that force tenderness to outrank performance. Alignment here is customization. The lesson keeps knocking in different costumes until you answer the door, not by theory, but by new behavior. The return to sanity. Seeing through collective insanity. You feel mad because you are finally healthy in a room that rewards sickness. Working yourself to the bone is called virtue. Feeling everything is called disorder. Pretending is called professionalism. Jung named this collective insanity, the hive mind that exiles soul and deifies mask. When your eyes adjust to real light, fluorescent normalcy hurts. You cannot rejoin certain conversations because you can hear the unconscious speaking through every sentence. You cannot laugh at certain jokes because they are made of anesthesia. Alignment here is revolt, quiet and devastating. You stop apologizing for reality. You stop borrowing your perceptions from the crowd. You reclaim your nervous system from the marketplace. Archetypal summons. The inner other calls you home. Beyond symptom and culture, a deeper magnet pulls. The archetypal invitation. The hermit calls you to solitude, not as escape, but as refounding. The warrior demands boundary, not violence. The lover asks for permeability without collapse. Animus and anima, the inner masculine and feminine, seek courtship. The thinking function, learning to trust feelings' intelligence. The relational function, learning to honor direction and edge. Dreams intensify here. A wise figure leaves a task. A child wanders unprotected. A dark animal stalks and becomes ally when faced. You meet the shadow and discover power you exiled as dangerous, tenderness you outlawed as weak. Alignment here is communion with the inner other. You do not conquer, you converse. Ego stops leading the orchestra and becomes an instrument tuned to a pitch it did not invent. 7. Rubido emergence, unmotivated action and the seamless life after the furnace and the whitening, the reddening. Spirit died into matter, meaning inhering in movement. You do not get your motivation back. You become a different kind of mover. Unmotivated action is not apathy. It is flow that does not require self-congratulation to continue. Work becomes prayer without performance. Saying no feels like compassion for both parties. Saying yes no longer feels like a gamble against your own soul. You operate by resonance, not by resume. Here, individuation ceases to be a project and becomes a climate. Alignment, finally, is ordinariness, the extraordinary ordinariness of a life lived from the center, where dishes washed and letters written and children consoled belong to the same liturgy as meditation and art. These 7 do not replace the competitor's 5, they widen them. Synchronicity, suffering's threshold, the void, specific medicine, the return to sanity. These are stations along a spiral you will circle more than once. Archetypal summons deepens each station. Rubido emergence converts understanding into incarnation. The psyche is not linear, it is tidal, and you are not late, you are right on time. Along the way, the old engines cut out. Comparison drops like a dull blade from your hand. The illusion of linear time loosens its chokehold. Choice dethrones itself and is replaced by willingness. Neuroscience would say your networks are repatterning. Myth would say the phoenix has learned the art of ash. Jung would say the self is taking its seat. Let what is leaving leave. The person you begged to understand won't. The institution you hoped would humanize itself can't. The many pleasures that once anesthetized now taste like plastic. Do not call this loss. Call it accuracy. The more you stand in what is, the less appetite you have for what never was. A woman in her 30s arrives exhausted by excellence. She was raised in a house where love leaked only when she performed perfectly. The persona she built, competent, courteous, constantly capable, saved her childhood and is killing her adulthood. She cannot stop achieving. She cannot feel alive. Promotions leave her emptier. Vacations feel like failure rehearsals. Night after night, she dreams that she is carrying a tray stacked with fragile glasses through a crowded room. She never drops them, and she never sits down. In analysis, the tray becomes symbol, not symptom. The mother archetype twisted into service without self. Her specific medicine is not rest alone, but rupture. The holy rupture of saying no where she once said yes to survive. She begins microscopically. One boundary at work, one unreturned message. The world does not end. The dream shifts. A single empty glass appears on an open table. The psyche cheers softly. The unlived shadow, anger, appetite, refusal, re-enters through the front door. She learns a new form of success. To disappoint without abandoning. To serve without erasing. To love without being consumed. Her alignment is not a viral awakening. It is a calendar of quiet refusals that add up to a life she can feel from the inside. A man in his 40s stops sleeping after the death of his father. Grief unmasks a secret. Their decades-long rivalry was his life's metronome. Without it, time dissolves. He stares at the ceiling and senses not sadness, but unreality. Mornings come like blank pages he cannot write upon. He thinks he is depressed. His psyche is timely. It is offering him the hermit. Not isolation, but renunciation of the old sport of becoming better than. He resists and scrolls. He cannot swallow. He agrees at last to walk at dusk without a device. In the stillness, the first uncoached tears arrive. He dreams his father is a giant tree whose roots are tangled in his own. He does not cut them. He lays down with them, weeping. The next week, he feels the smallest wish, to cook a simple meal for a friend without turning it into theatre. The default mode network quiets enough for a taste of flow. He is not healed. He is honest. Sanity, Jung said, often looks like slowness at first. He begins to keep company with his life. A teacher in her 50s loses faith in the system that made her. 20 years of excellence and 2 decades of witnessing the harm a factory can do to a soul. She wants to burn it down. She also needs the paycheck. The tension of opposites, Jung would say, is the crucible where a third thing is born. She dreams of a small room with a candle and 3 chairs. She rents one in a community center and begins hosting office hours for the heart. 5 students come, then 12. The institution remains itself. She remains herself within it differently. She keeps her job, but she is no longer employed by it. The inner contract has changed. Individuation does not always require escape. Sometimes it requires sovereignty in place. Modern parallels make the pattern obvious. Burnout is not merely overwork, it is over-neglect of the soul. Doom-scrolling is not news addiction, it is grief avoidance. Hustle culture is not ambition, it is sacrificial religion disguised as career. Online spirituality promises ascension while flattering the persona that engineered your suffering. The cure is not contempt, it is contact. Contact with your own body's weather. Contact with dream and symbol. Contact with the small, human scale where love survives abstraction. Integration looks ordinary from the outside. You will not glow. You will return texts more slowly. You will stop pretending to enjoy gatherings that siphon your life force. You will apologize less for existing. You will seek fewer mirrors and more windows. You will let people misunderstand you rather than abandon your center to be translated into their language. You will become legible to yourself. And when the old panic returns, you will recognize its voice and not take its advice. You will remember that the void is a womb. You will put a hand on your sternum like a faithful friend and say, "We have been here. We know how to wait." That sentence is alchemy. It converts fear into belonging. If the beginning felt like falling inward, the return feels like standing in the open without armor. No trumpet sounds, no certificate arrives. The world looks the same, and you do not. You do not need to advertise the difference. It advertises itself in the gentleness with which you pick up a glass, the honesty with which you say, "No, thank you," the reverence with which you say, "Yes." The 7 alignments continue to orbit your days like quiet moons. Synchronicities still whisper. You no longer demand they shout. Suffering still visits. You have learned to converse rather than bargain. Emptiness returns. You lay a table for it and discover it is a guest who eats little and leaves gifts. Your core complex knocks less often. When it does, you smile like someone answering the door to an old teacher. Sanity sometimes stings. You bless the sting for keeping you awake. Archetypes court your imagination. You dance with them without mistaking costume for skin. Action arises without whip crack. You move when moved. If there is a sentence to carry from this whole passage, let it be this: your disappearance was evolution. You did not vanish to escape. You withdrew to integrate. The difference is everything. Escape leaves life behind. Integration brings life home. You will re-enter rooms you left, but you will not lose yourself in them. You will sit at tables where the old games are still being played and discover that you no longer wager your soul. Jung once wrote that the goal is not to be good, but to be real. Real is not an aesthetic, it is a sacrament. Real pays its debts, tells the truth, and forgives itself. Real is the silence that follows a laugh that wasn't performed. Real is the thank you you give your body after a meal. Real is the exact number of things you can care about, and the humility to let the rest pass unrescued. Real is the river within you, resuming its course. If you must name what happened here, call it recentering. The axis of your life has moved from persona to presence, from performance to participation, from willpower to willing. You will still stumble, holy people do, but you will stumble with awareness, which is to say, with less violence. You will still hurt, awake people do, But pain will not be your prison. It will be your passage. You will still doubt, honest people do, but doubt will not send you back to sleep. It will keep you close to the fire. Do not look for an ending. Look for a continuity that feels like kindness. Look for the return of small joys you did not have to earn. Look for the way your breath meets your body, like two old friends who no longer need to fill the silence. Look for the day, not far off, when you realize you have gone hours without pretending. This, then, is the secret your crisis came to tell. You were never meant to become someone else. You were meant to become the one who can finally stay in your house, in your body, in your time, in your life. The self has been waiting in the center like a light behind a curtain. The curtain opens. The room is unchanged, and yet, for the first time, you can see. The 7 alignments will find you again when you need them. They are not milestones to check off. They are friendships. Treat them that way. When synchronicity knocks, open. When pain concentrates, bow. When the void arrives, keep vigil. When your old wound repeats, listen for what you refused to hear last time. When sanity stings, trust it. When archetypes summon, learn their steps. When action arises without motive, do not insult it with a plan. You do not have to hold on to this. Let it hold you. The self is patient. The psyche remembers. The body forgives. And life has always loved you in ways you could only recognize when the noise thinned enough to hear it. Your disappearance was evolution. Your return is recognition. Nothing outside you has been perfected. Everything within you has been included. The opposites are no longer enemies. They are married. The flame burns red where once it burned white. Rubido. Spirit died into matter. Matter lighting from within. You will still set alarms and answer messages. You will still sit in traffic and queue at pharmacies and do the 1,000 tasks of the mortal day. But the secret has changed hands. The divine did not ask you to rise above your life. It asked to live your life with you. Walk out into the day now, not as someone improved, but as someone aligned. If the world does not applaud, it is because the audience you needed has taken its seat inside your chest. Breathe. Listen. Move when moved. And if darkness visits tonight, welcome it like a weather system that belongs. Everything belongs here, including you. You did not find this message. It found you when you were finally ready to be found.